Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. And welcome to this exciting World Water Week session on cooperation opportunities for improved integration across SDG6. My name is Jorge Alvarez Sala, and I'm the Acting Senior Advisor for Water and Climate Resilient WASH at UNICEF headquarters. On behalf of UNICEF, UNDP, and SIWI, I appreciate your time to join this session, and I'm confident that it will meet your expectations. Before we start with the session, I would like to share with you some practical recommendations. First, arrange a split screen or set up two monitors that you will need to see the Zoom windows. You should be able to see myself and the speakers, as well as the chat function in Pathable. Please start sharing your questions, ideas, reflections through the chat in Pathable. We will filter them to the moderator of the session, myself, during the plenary session. Please note that the Costa Rica presentation is in Spanish. If you're not fluent in Spanish, you can follow up the translation in the chat box. That's the importance of keeping the two windows open. Now, allow me to introduce you to today's speakers. The first one is Kellyanne Naylor, who is the UN Water Co-Chair, Panchali Saika, who is the WASH Program Manager at SIWI, His Excellency Ambassador Ashau Tingamo, who is the State Minister at the Ministry of Water and Energy in Ethiopia, Mr. Marco Cordero, Water Intendant at Autoridad Reguladora de los Servicios Públicos in Costa Rica, is the regulatory agency. Engineer Khaldom Hassam is the Secretary General of the Arab Countries Water Utilities Association. Marianne Helen, who is the Senior Water Advisor at UNDP, and Alejandro Jimenez, WASH Program Director at SIWI, and last but not least, Colin Heron, who is the Senior Water Resources Management Specialist at GWP. Now, I would like to pass the floor to Kellyanne Naylor, the UN Water Co-Chair, for her opening remarks. Over to you, Kelly.
Distinguished speakers, co-hosts, and participants. Welcome to this session on cooperation opportunities for improved integration across SDG6. My name is Kellyanne Naylor, and I am UN Water's Vice Chair and also UNICEF's Director for WASH and SEED. I'm delighted to be here today to introduce this session that will focus on a piece of work that UNDP, SIWI, and UNICEF have been working on as a contribution for better integration between, on one hand, water resources management, or WRM, and on the other hand, WASH, water supply, sanitation, and hygiene agendas, working together across SDG6. We're just months ahead of the UN 2023 Water Conference. As many of you know, this will be the first UN conference with a focus on water that has been organized in more than 40 years and only the second in history. This is a watershed moment for the sector and a golden opportunity for us to come together across the whole of SDG6. Water is cross-cutting and supports the achievement of many sustainable development goals that make close linkages with climate, energy, cities, the environment, food security, poverty, gender equality, and health, among others. With climate change so profoundly affecting our economies, societies, and the environment, water is currently one of the biggest deal breakers to being able to achieve internationally agreed water-related goals and targets, including those contained in the 2023 Agenda for Sustainable Development. This lack of coordination between WRM and WASH is a long-standing problem, and many of us have worked on this for years. I think we can see on one hand an action that influences the water resource that another sector may rely on and aim to protect, has implications related to the other actors' interests. Sometimes institutional mandates overlap, and sometimes there are gaps. And often this results in important issues being neglected or falling through the cracks. This is why cooperation is necessary to be able to maximize the positive co-benefits and minimize negative conflicts between users and uses of water resources. This fragmentation, whilst understandable, is also difficult to overcome, and we've recognized that it really requires a concerted effort from all concerned actors and progressive reforms to overcome. and especially due to the wide number of stakeholders involved in water. With the impetus of the SDG6 and climate change, the recognition that wider cooperation on water is a key to progress is leading to reform. Overcoming intersectoral policy and institutional fragmentation was identified by UN Water as one of the most important bottlenecks that needs to be addressed to accelerate SDG6 progress. This momentum needs to be further capitalized on with more concrete action taken. This report being presented today gives a framework for WRM-WASH cooperation, which sets out key cooperation areas that can form a concrete and tangible entry points for WRM and WASH actors to cooperate on and to work towards achieving joint outcomes. I hope that you'll find this session inspiring. I know I have really enjoyed being part of preparing and reviewing this report. I think the elements that are included in this framework can give us the practical tools that we need to enhance cooperation between WRM and WASH on the ground in countries around the world. In particular, when we look at the current triple crisis linking health, economy, and climate change, we are all going to need to work together now more than ever to join forces to achieve SDG6 and all the water-related Sustainable Development Goal targets by 2030. Thank you very much, and I wish you an enjoyable session and a fantastic World Water Week.
Thank you, Kelly. Well, allow me to explain you briefly that, well, in 2020, an analytical brief was commissioned by UNDP and UNICEF after a UN Water discussion or an open space relating to the work of the UN Water Task Force on country-level engagement in Rome. The report, which is expected to be published later this year, has been produced by SIWI as part of the UNICEF UNDP SIWI Accountability for Sustainability Partnership with financial support from SIDA. So this is the core of today's session. And I believe that with months before the UN 23 Water Conference, it's the right time for such report, in which you will find a number of recommendations to reduce the institutional fragmentation between WASH and water resources management institutions at country level. This policy document is intended to decision makers, but it can also provide a good roadmap for external support agencies interested in supporting the broader SDG6 sector. But now, without further delay, I would like to pass the floor to Dr. Marianne Kellen, who is, as I said, the senior water advisor and who works with the Water and Ocean Governance Program at UNDP. She supports UNDP country offices on water-related endeavors and develops corporate messages on water at the global level. So, Marianne, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jorge. I was just wondering also maybe we should have a presentation of the report, and I think that Panchali is working on the latest of this. Should we have the report presented and then the interventions, if that is all right?
Yes, Marianne, thank you so much for providing the floor to me. I will take all the participants today through some of the findings of the study that we had conducted, and also the cooperation framework on the water resources management and the water sanitation and hygiene. Let me share my screen first, if you allow me. I hope everyone is able to see it. So in this presentation, I'll take you through some of the key messages and also the cooperation framework that will actually guide in understanding the linkages between these two areas of WRM and WASH, identify the existing fragmentation, and also raise awareness on the potential concrete opportunity for cooperation. A key message that we want to convey through this policy document and study is that cooperation between WRM and WASH is necessary, as also raised by the UN Water Co-Chair in her keynote. Each of these areas has an important role to play to facilitate positive outcomes in the other area. We are all aware that resilient, sustainable, and safely managed wash service depend on certain quantity of water, which is ideally of good quality, in order to be able to provide good service level outcome, and in order to achieve those, to continue to provide services at all times and for all. And for this, managing water resources efficiently in the areas of environmental flow, agriculture, industry, and energy will be very critical to provide the sufficient quantity and quality of water resources. Similarly, a safe and biodiverse ecosystem require adequate sanitation, like improved access and proper management and treatment of solid wastewater, together with water source protection, can reduce negative impact of sanitation on the ecosystem. And here, largely, the WASH contributes to conservation and protection of the water sources and the environment through efficient and safely managed services. And another critical point on why this cooperation is needed and necessary is raising on and looking into this cooperation in allowing for a greater alignment of policies and practices across not just these two areas, but can also support in greater global policy coherence. Because of the central role of water in a vast array of sectors, effective cooperation between these stakeholders contribute to achieving and advancing in these global goals, like the Sustainable Development Goal 6. As I pointed out earlier, there is a very close link between when we talk of water resources management and WASH, and we can see this close link also across the different goals within SDG6 and the targets, whether we are looking into increased wastewater treatment, as I mentioned, to the good quality of water and freshwater resources, to securing the water supply for drinking water services. Similarly, like I mentioned, in terms of the safely managed sanitation, and also not to forget about the integrated water resource management, the SDG 6.5 goal at all levels that is encouraged to implement, that can create a synergy across all these SDG 6 goals. Along with these SDGs, we also look into the climate agenda, which is where there can be a lot of contribution to improved cooperation between WRM and WASH through ensuring resilient WASH services that can also further provide water resources monitoring and planning for mitigating against climate risk and uncertainty. And this can further also help us achieve the Sendai framework disaster reduction goals, which is ensuring that the services continuity even during disasters, and also having drought and flood preparedness measures like early warning systems, where there could be cooperation together for joint early warning systems and dissemination of information and data, and also protection from water-related disasters. But how can we really identify these fragmentations, these gaps, and what kind of cooperation areas is needed between this? Integrating the management and development of water resources management and WASH operation demands a greater alignment of their visions and strategies, which are spearheaded by structured and institutional factors, how these water resources and services are managed and governed. Let's look at the WASH angle first. For WASH particularly, the WASH Enabling Environment Framework has been widely adopted and used to identify such governance gaps and also strengthen the governance of the sector, which outlines some key governance functions and building blocks of the WASH system, as you can see, which really compiles into sector policy and strategy, institutional arrangement ranging from service delivery to regulations, accountability, and also financing, monitoring, and capacity development. Now, when we need to look into the wider discipline of water, including water resources, there could be similar kind of functions, but the sub-function or components that the water resources implement may overlap with what the water resources, water services functions and sub-functions allowing, but there could be certain overlaps, and also it could be distinct in terms of who the stakeholders are actually managing this kind of functions, whether at what level. So this is something very critical in terms of when we are trying to look into identifying these cooperation areas and governance. Let me give an example, say for example, the regulatory functions. When we look into the service provision, the WASH sector, the sub-functions could include tariff setting, water pricing, service quality, consumer protection. When we look into the water resources, it could include environmental, economic regulation, setting water abstraction limit, and also ambient of water quality standards and control. Now, investigating these areas of overlaps of WRM and WASH can actually help find out what are the areas where we need to cooperate. And this is what we had focused and investigated within the team to look into and frame the WASH WRM cooperation framework. After thorough analysis and looking into it, we reached the conclusion that the actions taken by these two sectors and areas implement and look into 18 common areas of sub-functions that they implement, which can actually provide opportunities for cooperation. This ranges from basin catchment and watershed management to water source protection, pollution prevention, to looking into the climate resilience aspect of drought, flood mitigation, climate financing, climate resilient water safety and planning, to also looking into the wider aspect of integrated water resources management, which encompasses water resource monitoring, water sector planning processes, environmental service, and public health regulation aspect. Now, these cooperation areas were categorized and compiled into broader joint outcomes, which really encompasses the critical outcomes that we are looking into by improving the cooperation between these two areas across these 18 categories that we had mentioned. Now, these are the categories into broad joint outcome achieved through improved cooperation with the 18 outcomes is clear. Although all the 5 joint outcomes are closely linked and interlinked and interdependent in their contribution to achieve the outcome and larger outcome of safe, adequate water for all, and also ensuring the integrity of environmental flow, and also protecting the sources and water conservation and protection and ecosystem. There is kind of made commitment at all sectors to cooperate actions across these 5 components to improve governance. Now, within the joint outcomes areas, we're looking into the best practices and evidences during our studies, and we found that there are actually good evidences and practices across all these 5 joint outcomes, which really shows that there has been a good cooperation between water resources and WASH stakeholders that has been able to achieve a good outcome and sustainable and resilient outcome in both these areas. For example, around equitable water resource allocation, we have the example from Nepal, the water use master planning, which was also looking into having an integrated approach and community-based approach in this intervention. We could also look into the sustainable water management, looking into water source protection, whether through the water funds in Ecuador or in Latin America countries implemented by the Nature Conservancy, and also looking into water tariffs to protect water sources in Costa Rica, which will be presented shortly in the country perspective segment. We also found a lot of examples around climate resilience, drought and flood disaster resilience, whether we are looking into integrated approach around drought early warning system in Maharashtra, in India, or we are looking into the nexus in climate financing led by UNDP, UN Habitat, and UNICEF in this area. There is also examples around integrated water resource management, and one will be presented today is the One WASH program in Ethiopia. Now, as a way forward, looking into, given that this cooperation is needed and we have some best practices, it's also important that these practices are scalable. It's kind of something that is more disseminated, so people are aware this kind of interventions could actually lead to some good, sustainable and resilient water resource management and services. To really look into some of these way forward for the practitioners and policymakers, we have provided some recommendation in the policy document, and it aligns with the UN Water Sustainable Development Goal 6 Accelerator Framework that helps in catalyzing this and strengthening this WRM-WASH cooperation. I'll go through quickly some of these brief recommendations across all these 5 pillars of this global accelerator framework, and how it can actually provide a direction for countries and also for policymakers and and also looking at the international level to implement some of these aspects around improving this intersectoral cooperation. First, looking at the governance angle, where we look into integrating and looking and revisiting some of the water and wash policy and strategies to integrate this lens of WRM and WASH interlinkages and connection, and also looking into some of the institutional reforms. Not to also forget strengthening regulatory approach, as I mentioned earlier, is where it's needed. For example, having sanitation safety planning to ensure and reduce that the risk of risk associated with public health and environment is kind of reduced. We can also look into other pillars around innovation, where enabling environment needed for unconventional water resources option that could be explored with innovative financing and sustainable business models. Now, on the pillar on financing, this has been something, a very critical discussion ongoing about how water features in the climate financing and global climate financing, which is why it's very important that these two sectors work together to really implement and see how this kind of financing could be acquired for the resilient and sustainable interventions. It's also important to look into how donors focuses, and they really need to look into that there is an interlinked and interconnection between these two, which is where it's important that donor campaigns really look into certain packages of the WASH ODA that can be really kind of shared with the water resources activity related, and also vice versa with all the donor funding that goes to water resources that could be also done together with the WASH sector stakeholders. Not to forget that capacity development is very critical, and we really need to look into some of these joint studies that could be done together for equitable water resource allocation. And not only that, but also raising that this awareness is very important, where there could be trainings organized for water resources stakeholders around WASH services, and also vice versa for WASH actors around water resources and the data and information. And here is where it comes important on the last pillar is on data and information, where water quality monitoring will be very crucial, but not only that, but also availability and disseminating and sharing at the right time to the right stakeholders is important, which is where it plays a very critical role when we talk about this improved intersectoral cooperation. This can also help in terms of doing some country analysis together on the SDG6 progresses, where the country is lagging behind, and how can this gap across this water and water resources management and WASH can reduce those gaps. So these are some of the set of recommendations provided in the policy document. We have just provided a very sneak peek of what it overall touches upon, but it will soon be released and published later next year to really cover and provide guidance for everyone. But what more as a concluding statement I want to make in my presentation is that it's important that to ensure this cooperation is kind of implemented, but also the awareness is built. The political commitment at different levels, both at national and international level, is very much needed to raise this awareness and to raise the issue of the intersectoral cooperation needed across these different country level implementation and also global policies. Thank you so much for your patience, and I'll hand it over to Jorge.
Thank you very much, Panchali, for providing an excellent framework of the Nexus water resources management, water and sanitation and hygiene, and the challenges and opportunities. I forgot to introduce Panchali. Panchali Saikia is the WASH program manager at SIWI, and is the water governance and resilient expert, contributing to several programs, including the UNICEF, UNDP, SIWI Accountability for Sustainability Partnership, and the UNDP SIWI Water Governance Facility. We will now hear from examples from Ethiopia, from the Middle East, and from Costa Rica. I would like to start with Ethiopia. I'm delighted to have with us today His Excellency Ambassador Asfaw Dingamo, who is the State Minister at the Ministry of Water and Energy in Ethiopia. He served as the Minister of Water Resource and Mining, Ministry of the Federal Democratic Republic of Ethiopia, as Bureau Head of the SNNPR region in the Water Resources and Energy Department, and as Ambassador to India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and Myanmar. He has been very active in leading and coordinating boards of a number of international organizations and research groups, particularly those working in relation to water technology. So His Excellency Ambassador Ashfall, the floor is yours.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jorge Alvarez. Gracias por darme esa oportunidad. First of all, I would like to thank you for giving us this floor to introduce our WRM-WASH national program, which is a sector-wide approach with a comprehensive management structure. As you know, the Ethiopia's WASH program has evolved from random supply-driven project-based approach to single integrated WRM-WASH national program, which is actually being implemented in our country. When we came to this final and current implementation program, we have been evaluating meticulously, and we have been looking what are the merits, what are demerits, what are advantages, disadvantages, and the weaknesses and the strengths of each of these programs. Finally, from random supply-driven project-based approach, then we have passed to planned supply-driven project-based approach. Then we have evolved from that approach to planned demand-driven program approach, and again to planned harmonized sector-wide approach. This approach is bringing all the resources of donor or development partners, the government contribution, the communities, NGOs all together. And finally, we came to this single integrated WRM-WASH national program. You can see from this point that WRM-WASH national program has a main instrument for government of Ethiopia to achieve the SDGs and on WASH targets. As you know, the harmonization of those funds which have different modalities, the financial report issue, the program report issue, the guidelines of each donor came together to be integrated and form WRM-WASH national program. This WRM-WASH national program gives us the leverage to have one report, one account, and one budget and one plan. So all the donors come together to implement that national program, and it is giving us a very positive return. By doing so, our core guiding principles here are, by having a memorandum of understanding with this, donors. One of the issue we have taken into account was integration of water, health, education, and the finance ministries, which are involved heavily in this program. Now, the finance ministry, who is a financier and the one who is responsible to have a report, financial reports, because each ministries produce interim financial report, and the consolidated financial report has been already prepared by the Ministry of Finance. Then the integration issue is there, alignment of partners, planning and management systems and produces with the government of Ethiopia, harmonization of partners approach and activities, partnership between implementing partners is one of the core principles which is involved in this program. The program components are, almost the rural pastoralist WASH, because we have in the country very big community of pastoralists, and they have their own features, development features, water needs, and management style of those schemes. So we have taken into account this program component. We have urban WASH because urbanization is growing in the country, and which require also special attention, as our water resource management policy envisages that water as economic and social good. And in those areas where the affordability is much better in urban areas, we have put into place the payment approach, which is at a cost recovery issue, and that is where we have also that component. Institutional WASH, that is a capacity building at institutional level. The management style has been already taken into account. Climate resilient WASH, as there is a recurrent drought in much of the country, has created a very serious issue on water supply and sanitation. And the institutional and the climate resilient WASH is already taken into account. Program management and the capacity building at each level is required also until from ministerial level to community level. This management system has been taken into account. Again, the program pillars, we have one WASH program which has maximizing the available and efficient use of resources, because we have harmonized. We brought all resources in one basket fund, and from there we are using one plan, we are using one report, and that guideline goes from top to community level. Also, there is an enabling environment and good governance at each level. We have to ensure that, and the capacity development in each level is very important. And within this WASH program, we have been implementing this. The coordination and implementation arrangement for one WASH and institutional arrangement has been already taken into account. At the national level, we have a steering committee of different ministries who are taking part. As I have told you, the Ministry of Water Resources, who is a chair of this steering committee, the Health Ministry, the Ministry of Education, because we have a lot of schools at urban and rural areas where many youngsters are taking part, and more than 30-40 million of students are enrolled every year in the country, because we have a very big chunk of young community in the country. So these ministries are involved there. We have a national WASH technical team consisting of directors at each level who are responsible for implementing this program. Also, National Coordination Office, which is bringing the three ministries, including the Ministry of Water, four ministries who are core ones in this program. And also we have development partners and NGOs in this institutional arrangement, as well as a similar prescribed regional, at regional level also. We have at regional and zonal levels, which is the lower administrative schemes in the country. And we have also the same type of integration and at a lowest level in the community and at Woreda. We call it Woreda, this is a district, and that is, you can see from this scheme how this coordination office is working.
Your Excellency, sorry, you have 2 minutes.
Yeah, I already am. So basic implementation principles are decentralization, demand responsive, equity, transparency, inclusive, participatory monitoring, sustainability, and gender inclusiveness is already taken into account. Progress to date has been already evaluated, and this is very good. And we have made lessons from here, and the lessons have been relearned, strengthening domestic resource mobilization, revitalization of framework at multi-stakeholder partnership participation. All-inclusive participatory approach has been already learned. Monitoring framework and implementation guideline at all levels has been already put in place. Creating and nurturing vibrant partnership to achieve SDG targets and combat climate change as well. And accountability at all levels have been already put in place. And we have learned these lessons, which has ensured and strengthened our program. And I thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for this great presentation about the sector-wide approach in Ethiopia and how water resources management has been integrated in the current phase of the WRM-WASH national program. We will move now to a different region, to the Middle East, where Engineer Haldom Hasham, Secretary General of the Arab Countries Water Utilities Association, will and member a board of directors at the Water Authority of Jordan, municipal councils. He has served as board member in the Jordan Water Company, Miyahuna, and Northern Governorate's Water Administration and Aqaba Water Company. So, Engineer Haldom, I would like to hear from you examples on sanitation safety planning and for integrated wastewater reuse in Jordan, Lebanon, and Egypt. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. First of all, are you going to move the slides with a signal from my side, or I will do?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so you'll be, okay, please. Next slide. Hello. Well, thank you for inviting me for this very important event. And this is also building the partnership between SIWI and Aqua for the coming years, inshallah. Now, these are the outlines. I will go very quickly on that. It's all related to the sanitation safety plan and related it with the SDGs. Now, first of all, we would like to talk about the challenges facing the water sector. We have an increase in population. We have scarcity of renewable water resources, plus most 60% of the water resources comes from out the Arab region. Over abstraction from the groundwater resources. The climate change is affecting the water sector very fast with late response, and the political unrest in the region came to deepen the crisis on that. So this results reduce in water per capita per day, and then we need an urgent action to reduce and bridge the gap between the demand and the available water resources. Now, by saying that, I think since the Arab region has utilized most of their water resources, then we have to go for unconventional one. So treated wastewater could be as a solution. It's a renewable water resources. It can be used in agriculture purposes to reduce the pressure on the fresh water. It's cheaper than the other unconventional water resources, such as desalination. Improving the level of treated wastewater to tertiary level will allow us and give us the ability to go for unrestricted agriculture purposes and other solutions such as groundwater recharge and use it in industrial. Now, next, please. Now, since we talk about the wastewater as a solution, we have a scarcity. There should be response on the scarcity. Response on the scarcity is to apply the resource management. As I said in my previous slide, the high quality treated wastewater can be essential segments of the National Water Master Plan and the water budget. In Jordan, our National Water Master Plan contains a certain number, the target number for the treated wastewater that will be within the water budget and allocated for agriculture, and make reallocation for other resources to use it in other needs. Next, please. WHO started talking about the reuse in 2006. They issued the target, the guidelines for reuse. It's an integrated approach. It started from taking care of the effluent from wastewater treatment to farm, to handling, at the end to the customer table. But these guidelines are flexible, and it varies from one country to country, depends upon the level of treatment. And that's why it doesn't give very good chance and the proper way to deal with all the hazard risk on each element of the approach. Some people, they have different criteria and different environment in every, either at the level or handling, etc. So it was not the proper way of eliminating the hazard. In 2015, WHO issued their manuals in SSP for safe use of disposal wastewater, grey water, and etc. The sanitation safety plan followed the same procedure of the water safety plan that they've developed by WHO. It started from getting the water from the toilet at the municipal house level, the industrial, after making a pre-treatment, then it goes to the collection system, then we'll get it to the improved, to the treatment plants, where we improve this treatment plant. It may go for tertiary level, then goes to the farm, where we use it in agriculture, handling it by helping putting guidelines for end users, protecting the lands, and the end marketing and the consumer stable, where we have to check the quality of the product that we are having on our life. Now, this is the model for the sanitation safety plan. I will not go through, I think many of you know that, but it's a completed process starting from preparation, etc. And the most important is identifying in area 3, identifying the hazard and try to deal with it to have a very safe products. Next one, how implementation SSP towards achieving SDGs. According to classifications at universal level, implementing the SSP will achieving part of the quantity in target 6.1 and 6.4. I'm not going to go detail about 6.1, 6.4 and others because it's well known to everybody. And equitable, again, and reliability, it achieves in 6.1 and 6.4. In safe, then we are talking about the quality of the wastewater, 6.1 and 6.3. And affordability and targeting the pool, then we talk about 6.1. At the end, for educate and the treatment reuse, this means sustainability. It goes and help in achieving 6.3, 6.4, 6.6. It also, next one, it also may help in achieving other targets like increasing the agricultural product. It means increase the land of and create more jobs, and this help in poverty, SDG1. In securing food, more products will come. We are talking about zero hunger, SDG2. As a renewable water resources, the high quality treated wastewater will help in mitigation with the climate change. We have especially to relieve the pressure on the freshwater resources in drought and disaster. And here we are talking about the climate change, SDG 13, reducing the contamination of the sea and land, talking about life blue water 16.4 and life on land. There are some other areas that sanitation safety plan. Next one, please. Yes, okay, that's okay. You know, most of the 66% of our water comes from outside the region, so it will reduce by producing more water, reducing the dependency on the transboundary water, reduce the conflict by thinking together and working together for additional work, and secure additional resources will build the trust. And on the negotiation, then we talk about peace, justice, and strong institution 16. Now, hosting SSP in the Arab region, I would like to talk about experience in Aqua through one of the projects.
Sorry, you have 1 minute.
My followers, they talk more 3 minutes, but I will not go more. I think the first speaker took 4 minutes, but I will stick with your 1 minute you gave me. Thank you. It's a project implemented in Egypt, and Lebanon and Jordan. Our role was mainly training. We trained about 91 face-to-face and 31 participants in the following issues. These are the issues that you can refer to: governance, social economic, water use technology, etc. And we developed guidelines, technical tour to 2 countries, Egypt and Jordan, to look for the Aqaba Water Company experience and Tel Asfar wastewater treatment. Conclusion, well, the sanitation safety plan is a holistic approach for protecting the treated wastewater, starting from toilet to table by developing manuals and SOPs criteria. In the field, industrial wastewater treatment and monitoring, protection of wastewater collection, because to prevent the hazard materials dumped in that, improve the level of treatment in wastewater treatment plants to high quality that we can meet the standards for every type of agriculture. Then we have to develop manuals at the farm level for the end users to prevent the soil from contamination, to ensure agricultural product for developing sampling and laboratory analysis to trace hazard materials in the product. At the end, it needs many stakeholders to work within, starting from the water utilities, water ministry, Ministry of Water, Agriculture, Health, etc. Those people will be the team led by the water utilities in implementing this sanitation safety plan. At the end, I would like to say treated wastewater or reclaimed water is the key person for the development of and sustainability. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Engineer Ashman, for this interesting presentation from one of the most water-scarce regions in the world. We will now move to another part of the world. Mr. Marco Cordero, who is the water intendant at Autoridad Reguladora de los Servicios Públicos, RSEP, in Costa Rica. So the regulatory entity there is an economist and a specialist in public services regulation, specifically in the energy and water sector. 15 years of experience in tariff setting, methodologies, and applications. Mr. Marco Cordero has served as Director and Intendant of Energy and currently as Intendant of Water. I would like to remind everybody that this presentation is in Spanish. So if you are not fluent in Spanish, please look at the chat box in Pathable in the platform where we will be sharing the speech in English from Mr. Marco Cordero. Thank you.
Muy buenas tardes, mi nombre es Marco Cordero, Intendente de Agua de la Autoridad Reguladora de los Servicios Públicos de Costa Rica. Hoy vamos a presentar la estrategia de implementación de la tarifa de protección del recurso hídrico. Dicha estrategia está fundamentada sobre la celebración de un taller, la cual le permite a las organizaciones y prestadores de servicios planificar de manera estratégica no solamente el definir las necesidades que tienen en términos de proteger el recurso hídrico, sino que estas necesidades se puedan estructurar en ideas y que estas ideas le permitan a los interesados en crear un perfil de proyecto. Una vez que dispongamos de este perfil de proyecto con todas sus justificaciones, objetivos y alcances, podemos pasar a lo que conocemos como la definición de los costos y del mercado, que van a determinar cuál va a ser el impacto de las decisiones con las cuales queremos proteger el recurso hídrico, pero además quiénes tienen que atender la obligación. Y por último, vamos a traducir todo esto en una petición tarifaria que llegará a la autoridad reguladora, para la cual tendrá cerca de 2 a 3 meses para la implementación de la tarifa y la resolución final. Dicha estrategia no solamente actúa de manera directa la autoridad reguladora de servicios públicos, sino que tiene actores importantes en dicho ejercicio, como la aplicación de un protocolo por parte de, en este caso, de la empresa de acueductos y alcantarillados, que es el principal prestador de servicio y quien de una u otra forma funciona como un puente en dicho ejercicio. Y por otro lado, organizaciones no gubernamentales como Aliarse y socios estratégicos para trasladar, capitalizar y eventualmente capacitar a estas organizaciones comunales en la protección del recurso hídrico. A manera de ejemplo, podemos ver algunas de las aplicaciones, por ejemplo, en el principal prestador del servicio, que es acueductos y alcantarillados. Tenemos el primero, que es la protección del recurso hídrico subterráneo de la parte alta de la cuenca del río Barranca y la subcuenca del río Paz en Alajuela. Este ejercicio incorpora el pago de servicios ambientales para proteger un área cercana a 35 kilómetros cuadrados y la fijación tarifaria que se logró determinar en su momento de acuerdo con la estructura de costos planteada por la empresa y los alcances que se pretenden obtener durante un periodo de 5 años, es una tarifa de 0,1960 centavos de dólar por metro cúbico de agua facturado. Otro ejemplos es la tarifa de protección del recurso hídrico de la empresa de Servicios Públicos de Heredia, que es la segunda empresa en capacidad y en cobertura, la cual incorporó dentro de sus necesidades el pago por servicios ambientales hídricos, también un estudio socioeconómico para la actualización y diferenciación de los montos del pago por servicios ambientales de la empresa de Servicios Públicos de Heredia y estudios hidrogeológicos para la delimitación de las microcuencas de las captaciones Yurro Hondo, Tanqueras, Albinos, Carbonera y Lajas, que son comunidades en las cuales se quiere proteger, ¿verdad? Como parte de la equipación para el monitoreo de la oferta del recurso hídrico en 9 fuentes subterráneas. La tarifa final obtenida para este ejercicio, para poder cubrir las erogaciones citadas anteriormente, es de 0,040 centavos de dólar por metro cúbico de agua facturada. Y el tercer ejemplo es la tarifa de protección del recurso hídrico de un acueducto comunal de la comunidad de Río Blanco, en Limón, la cual incorporó dentro de su alcance el estudio hidrogeológico para la subcuenca del Río Blanco, en Limón, el pago por servicios ecosistémicos en terrenos privados y el programa educativo El agua es vida para Río Blanco. Estas erogaciones para un periodo de 5 años incorporan la estructura de costos y por ende una tarifa promedio de 0,038 centavos de dólar por metro cúbico de agua. Como podemos observar, son 3 ejemplos de muchos otros que podemos lograr y que nos permiten no solamente salvaguardar el recurso actual, sino también el recurso para las futuras generaciones, de tal manera que pueda ser sostenible desde un punto de vista tarifario y desde un punto de vista del uso de dicho recurso para poder educar, para generar una cultura por parte de los diferentes usuarios, pero además de eso, para prolongar la vida útil del recurso en el tiempo, lo cual evidentemente nos incorpora dentro de decisiones intergeneracionales, pero siempre salvaguardando la estabilidad del recurso y a la vez atendiendo las necesidades de los diferentes usuarios por el recurso hídrico. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. I hope you have been able to follow the presentation from Costa Rica on the use of water tariffs to protect water sources and enhance climate resilience and sustainability, which is with some examples on payment for environmental services. We will now start a new chapter in today's session. We will have a panel discussion with the following panelists. We will have Marianne Helen, which I introduced earlier. Marianne is the Senior Water Advisor who works with the Water and Ocean Governance Program at UNDP, and she supports UNDP country offices on water-related endeavors and develops corporate messages on water at the global level. Today with us, we have Alejandro Jimenez, who is the WASH Program Director at SIWI. Alejandro heads the Water and Sanitation Department at SIWI, where his team provides advice, develops tools and methodologies, and conducts research, trainings, and workshops on governance issues around regulations, policies, and planning, WASH finance, capacity development, to support countries, regions to achieve sustainable and resilient water and sanitation services. And last but not least, Colin Herron, who is the Senior Water Resources Management Specialist at GWP. Colin is in charge of the Water Solutions for the Sustainable Development Goals program, supporting countries to mainstream integrated water resources management in their development objectives. Today, I would like to focus the discussion around the outcome and cooperation areas as presented in the framework. The themes of discussion include water allocation, sustainable water management, climate resilience, and integrated water resources management. So I'd like to start with Marianne, and I would like to ask you, I would like to know a little bit more about prioritization and equitable water resources allocation. So I would like to know, what are the current challenges to make equitable water resources allocation a reality? And what do you think, and if you think that the political level is nowadays recognizing in a more tangible way the balance to be struck between economy, environment, and basic needs. Marianne?
Thank you, Jorge. Yes, as I say, water resources allocation always means striking a balance between the social, the economic, and environmental concerns as they are reflected in the different uses of water. And most commonly, the choices and how we allocate, in fact, they're often made implicitly or indirectly in the way that we use land or what crops are grown, and how goods are produced and services provided. So ultimately, this is really about politics and I would say, I think that often the policy discussions are sometimes not bold enough to really embrace this. And this boldness understands really, I mean, who controls land use? How is that really managed? What are the incentives also for industrial activity and the service provision, so that we ensure that we have regulatory reforms in many cases, and involving also greater buy-in from society about the goals of the reforms. For example, if there is a generalized agreement in society that we want a cleaner environment, this provides both insights and also incentives to follow regulation. And industrials may, in this case, choose to invest in cleaner production rather than to sometimes pay somebody to look the other way. This stands to reduce the level of pollution, and pollution is really the most pernicious way of appropriating water resources. When it comes to service provision, in many places we find regulation and tariff policies that are effectively excluding large areas and most people, and often low-income populations. So while elites may consume low-priced water, low-income people have to pay expensively to informal water vendors, and this is not really by accident or lack of funding. It's really it's an exclusion that is by design through the regulatory and tariff frameworks we have. So the major challenge to equitable resource allocation, it relates to combining the technical insights about how different regulatory and tariff frameworks play out in practice, combined with the whole of society agreement about strategically and more equitably than sharing the benefits of our water resources. So thank you.
Thank you, Marianne. I would like to move to Alejandro, and I would like to ask him about the Costa Rica presentation, which illustrates on use of water tariffs to protect water sources and enhance climate resilience and sustainability. So my question to you, Alejandro, is how can enhanced regulations contribute to improving these interlinkages?
Thank you very much, Jorge. And I think the example of Costa Rica, by the way, presented by the regulator itself, is showing us how fundamental this is to really upscale these elements of combining WASH and water resources principles into tariff setting principles, right? So the example showed us that the regulator can set up the rules, but not only that we need a process to make this happen. The different examples showed a dialogue was established, how the different stakeholders were raising their concerns, the element they wanted to have reflected in the tariffs, the protection of water sources, the studies needed to understand what is needed, but not least the awareness raising of our population about the efficient and use of water, right? So I think for me, it is very important to highlight that the regulator can set the rules, and this is needed, and that was also Haldun in his presentation about the regulator can set the rules, can put a standard, but we also need, both presentations mentioned a process from sanitation safety planning to the processes of tariff setting that the example for Costa Rica was telling us. We need a process to make them happen so that they are really enforced, and not least some degree of technical support being needed to facilitate these processes and make these tariffs setting processes be a reality. I stop there for now.
Thank you, Alejandro. I would like to remind all participants to use the chat box in the Pathable platform in case you want to ask any questions or you have any comments. I would like to move to Colin from GWP. I mean, climate change impacts like drought and flood put additional stress on water resources, increasing competition among different water uses. Colin, what do you see as opportunities for wider cooperation between water resources management and water sanitation and hygiene in flood and drought resilience?
Yeah, thanks, Jorge, for the question. And first of all, can I just say that as we saw in the presentations just now, we really do need to join forces to face our common threats. The water community can't allow itself to be split into factions. And there are many benefits of joining forces. But the water that we're all here for this week is the same water, and it's under a threat, of course, from the multiple risks that we've seen in these presentations. And these factors, of course, do exacerbate the risk of flood and drought. Although the vulnerability of our water systems is more man-made and of course is uneven in space and time. So typically it's the most vulnerable segments of society that are most at risk from flood and drought. Our belief is that collective efforts to increase flood and drought resilience should focus on three pillars, which touch upon both water resources management and WASH. First, it's about monitoring and early warning systems. Secondly, it's about risk and impact assessment. And third, it's about risk management and response in an integral way. These are the pillars, in fact, of the Integrated Drought Management Program, IDMP, which GWP manages with the World Meteorological Organization. Both these programs have open communities, so I would like to invite anyone interested in this topic to join forces with us at the Global Water Partnership, WMO, and many other partners. WASH is actually an increasing angle that we're looking to focus on in these partner communities. And I also want to mention that GWP is actively partnering through its Global Water Leadership Program with UNICEF here today in 7 countries where we seek to join these two efforts together for enhanced overall climate smart water management. And just a final comment that, as we've seen recently, if we have too much or too little water in any place or time, it affects all users of water. So water supply, of course, but energy, food production, and so on. So to preserve the water that we all depend on, we really do need to aim for radical collaboration, which breaks down our institutional silos. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Colin. I hope we have time for a second round of questions. I would like to ask Marianne, is SDG6 helping countries to have a more holistic perspective to water management? What are the new opportunities and trends that you see?
Thank you. Yeah, we just heard about the importance of breaking down the institutional silos. And in fact, SDG6 is a very good tool for this. Actually, all countries have committed to SDG targets around universal service provision, about protecting water quality, managing water scarcity, also protecting water-based ecosystems, international cooperation, community participation, as well as the integrated water resources management at all levels. So SDG6 effectively combines these, the social, the economic, and the environmental concerns, which we need to keep in mind and at heart. So among the opportunities here, I think there is an increasing openness to more equitably considering the multiple values of water, and also for bringing in a greater set of stakeholders, and especially now also when we're gearing up for the UN 2023 Water Conference. I think in this regard, we are increasingly learning more and more about the nature-based solutions and also the important contribution by indigenous peoples, for example, in terms of maintaining biodiversity and that way also regulating water flows. So, and also climate change itself, if you can see that also as an opportunity, I think it's somehow pushing us to break some of these silos. And so I think this great threat is actually pushing the water sector to look more outside, to understand how water is used in different sectors and how increasing competition for water resources is adding to the squeeze. And that forces us to manage everyday challenges and strategic future challenges in a better way. So I think that that way we might even want to talk about strategic water resources management rather than integrated water resources management. I think and climate change is in a sense an opportunity to do just that, which we've always needed. Thanks.
Thank you, Marianne. I would like to continue on this point that you raised on climate change and ask Alejandro about, well, the cooperation between WRM and WASH is also an opportunity in terms of climate finance. What do you see as emerging opportunities for WASH to be better integrated into wider water climate finance proposals?
Thank you, Jorge. And I really like the point of Marianne of the strategic water resources management, which also would link to better balancing the different uses. And I think this is where the opportunity lies. No, we have seen in these examples how through WASH and a good coordination between water services and water and sanitation services and water resources, we can have very good effects in terms of adaptation and mitigation. So just yesterday we were in a session about the the new guidelines on water security that were released by the Green Climate Fund. And then we saw that there are two pathways that have been envisaged there. One pathway for water security to enhance water conservation, water efficiency, and water reuse. And the second one is about the strengthening integrated water resources management, clean water resources, and enhance resilient water supply and sanitation. And actually, all the examples we have been about and those presented by Panchali earlier tackle on both of these things and show us with tangible examples that this cooperation, strengthened cooperation between WASH and water resources is really an opportunity to bring this climate rational and together and bring these proposals that for financing, which and really need for up WASH water resources operation for better integrated in that have been said, including of course the SDGs. Over to you.
Thank you, Alejandro. I would like to move now to Colin, and I would like to ask Colin, how can approaches such as nature-based solutions improve water management? What role could national SDG6 processes play in bringing together WASH and water resources management stakeholders for this purpose?
Yeah, thanks, Jorge, for the question. And first, I mean, water comes from nature, and our water-related vulnerability in many ways is a direct consequence of the disconnection that we have from nature, both society at large, but also within this water community. And of course, that exacerbates our risk, not just of floods and droughts, but also slower onset risks, which can affect other sectors. But nature can also be our ally in attempts to achieve water security if we integrate it into our planning processes in water at all levels. That, of course, implies working across multiple disciplines, not just within our water community. I want to mention that in this World Water Week, we've heard about seeing the unseen, of course, referring to the value of water. But that very same challenge, we could also say that it refers to the value that we give to nature. And I would argue that those are not two separate battles that we're losing, but one and the same. And we need to join forces in that respect as well, which is integration. What I've just mentioned, of course, is also the spirit of the SDGs, which are supposed to be indivisible, meaning that you can't achieve one without achieving all of them. Yet there are so many organizations that are working on one specific target, and we often don't take into account the impacts that our well-intentioned actions could have on other targets, including possibly negative trade-offs. So if we are to achieve the 2030 agenda, we will only do so by working hand in hand, again, not just within the water community, not a sector, but a community, but also with these other sectors. And just a final comment that particularly aimed at the donor community. And of course, we understand that WASH projects are very tangible and visible and can be very attractive for donors. But I also want to highlight that if we don't support efforts upstream to have a better water resources management, then achieving universal WASH and the human right to water and sanitation just won't be possible. And my day job is actually about supporting countries to come up with investment portfolios on SDG6 through what we call the SDG6 IWRM support program. And that investment portfolio is available for anyone interested in supporting progress on SDG6. So I'll put the link in the chat later, but I hope that this invitation will be well received for the donor community to support these actions, which help countries reach this degree of integration. Thanks.
Thank you, Colin. Well, thank you very much for all speakers and panelists for this very interesting discussion and for all participants for staying with us. Allow me to summarize some conclusions. There are, I believe, 4 key messages from today's session. The first one is that cooperation between WASH and water resources management is necessary. The second one is that evidence shows that it is possible to overcome fragmentation through clear directions for cooperation at the policy and institutional level. The third key message, I believe, is that cooperation across sectors and actors needs to be scaled up. And the fourth message, I believe, is overcoming fragmentation through cooperation requires commitment and strong leadership. It is clear that transformative action is required to accelerate progress towards achieving SDG6 in its entirety. It is also clear that SDG6 cannot be achieved without urgently strengthening broader cooperation between WRM and WASH actors. An acceleration in overcoming persisting silos between WRM and WASH is long overdue. There is also a clear need for stronger leadership from international and national level actors, both government and non-government, to ensure overcoming silos between WRM and WASH is urgently given the attention it requires. The UN Water SDG6 Global Acceleration Framework provides the impetus to catalyze this needed transformative shift to strengthen WRM-WASH cooperation. In addition to SDG6, climate change represents a big challenge, but also an entry point for leveraging interest in strengthening WRM and WASH cooperation. The rationale for cooperation due to climate change is strong. Climate change is first felt through water, too much or too little. And given the impacts of climate change in terms of influence to change the quantity and quality of water resources and the result impacts on all aspects of WRM and WASH. It is in that spirit that is the upcoming report that we are hope to present later this year. It will provide many concrete case study examples of what strengthened cooperation looks like in practice, and will present a menu of opportunities for how to overcome fragmentation at the policy and institutional level for SDG6 acceleration. It is the intention that this report will or can guide the WRM and WASH practitioners and policymakers alike in the making of the long overdue transformative shift to integrated and holistic approaches to addressing the water crisis. I hope that you enjoyed the session, and I look forward to continuing the discussion in the road towards the 2023 Water Conference and beyond. Have a wonderful rest of the World Water Week. Bye.